friends. I am so grateful for the amazing season we had speaking with artists of faith, whether they were running a Christian-based dance company or operating in a ministry through their church or community service, or like our last guest, Amanda Standard. She's a K-12 dance educator in a standard school setting, but she also has her own dance company. And she was so excited. I got to connect with her over Christmas a little bit, and she was able to see her son perform with Ailey, which was just an amazing experience for any true blue dance mom, dance in her blood kind of mom. So God is doing amazing things in very different ways. And I think that's been a takeaway that I had from doing this project. I just sort of this thought entered my mind that wasn't really from me about, why don't you speak to faith-based people in the dance field? And honestly, I just thought it was going to be all dance ministries at church, all doing kind of the same thing. And those are all great things to do. But I honestly just thought, well, it's going to be a lot of the same thing. And I was totally wrong. I spoke with people who are integrating character development training within their ballet program training. Jenna Jones right here in Tennessee. So that was the other fun aspect for me, was connecting with people that are only like 45 minutes away from me, and also connecting with people across the country and different aspects that they're doing, and getting connected with advocacy organizations like Dance Awareness No Child Exploited. Has been a really wonderful connection for me. And so as I thought about wrapping up this season, and because a lot of these folks have a day job and their ministry that they do and their creative practice, connecting with them was I don't want to say a challenge, but a little unpredictable. So that season kind of stretched on while I was trying to get a hold of people and connected and all of those things. So it kind of was a much more, that season had some ebb and flow to it, but I'm really grateful for everyone that I was able to connect with. And so as I thought about closing out this season, and obviously there were quite a few folks who they expressed interest, but we just weren't able to make it work for right now. So that season may have kind of a part two to it. But for now, I thought now that we're already in 2026, it'd be good to put a cap on that season. And so I thought about what's my perspective in all of this. And so I thought back to the first dance show I produced. And I was in late high school, maybe my first year of college. I don't quite remember. And the dance studio where I had done a lot of my training, the owner had experienced some health challenges. And so the studio was sort of kind of in a transitional state. And in the meantime, another dance instructor in the area had passed away. And she had a small handful of students that were homeschooled wanting to have class kind of at a non-traditional time, which actually worked really well for me as a college student and as someone who was still dancing themselves. So I was able to teach dance in the early afternoon and then go to dance. And then I arranged my class schedule. So I was taking my academic classes in the morning. So it's a little hectic, but I had this space available to use and this handful of students that was a group of elementary school students and then an adult student who had been in a car accident, and she had recovered from the broken bones and things, but her equilibrium was still really off. And she, had done some really grueling rehab, and she was at a point where she wanted to do some movement that was just enjoyable, but still good for her. And so reestablishing that mind-body connection and having some fun with it was really great for dance. And somehow, I don't remember how she was connected. She was already connected to this group of elementary school students. And so they said, well, it's four girls who are in, I don't remember, they might have been in fourth grade. And then this adult, who I think was maybe working on her doctorate at the local university. So she had kind of a flexible schedule too. So it was just an interesting little group of people, but really fun. And I was new to running my own thing. So I went through the first few chapters of Vaganova, teaching manual written by one of her students and tried to make my syllabus. Um, and I'd had some really excellent training, but it's a little daunting all of a sudden when you're like, oh, how do I plan a cohesive curriculum? And I don't even know what outcomes I'm trying to achieve or what's reasonable. And so I had these four girls and the adult, and then I inherited a couple like young, like kindergarten age students from my church and another community member. So I just had, it was like less than 10 students. But for a college student, it was a great like part-time job, enough to kind of keep me going without too much strain schedule wise. So I'm just going along, doing my thing and trying to figure out how to take care of these students and give them quality training. Because I was really passionate about that. My earliest dance training was really, the foundations weren't there for me. So by the time I found a really strong dance program, I was way behind. But I just wanted to do as much as I could. So people allowed me to come in and they said, you're going to be in with the 7-year-olds till you get this sorted out. And I've danced with the 7-year-olds till I progressed up to finally getting back to dancers my own age. So I was really passionate about whatever I did. I wanted it to be quality, so that, if they ended up at another studio at some point or however they wanted to progress, that they would have options because they had strong training from me. So definitely feeling kind of the weight of that commitment, because I know how disappointing it is to feel like you've put all this hard work into something and then realize that what you have is not even close to enough, and it's not for your lack of interest or desire or effort. So I was really concerned about that. I was also really concerned about providing a safe, healthy space for dancers to train. I didn't want parents to be stressed out about what kind of costumes or music their children would be exposed to. And again, this is all in my hometown. I grew up in a really small town. So like these girls' moms, like some of them had been my preschool teacher or Sunday school teacher. So they had no problem telling me exactly how they felt about things, which was good. And I was 17, 18, starting this process, trying to figure out what I was doing, but really loving it, really enjoying the sort of creation and development aspect of it. So we're going through the year, and I kind of realized, I think, we need some kind of performance. And that's part of, there's the dance training that happens in the studio, but then there's learning how to share your movement in a meaningful way with other people. And I mean, we're like this little group of less than 10, and I'm just trying to figure out what can I do that's not, that suits who we are and how big our little program is. So then this idea just came to me, about the scripture and the gospels about how God clothes the lilies of the field. And really, is there anything more beautiful than that? And to not worry about what's coming tomorrow, because God has provided for nature, He's provided for the sparrows, and He'll provide for you. I think I combined two scriptures there in my mind, but I was really kind of captivated by this idea of the lilies of the field, and their purpose is being beautiful and reflecting their creator, and, beauty, inherently beautiful. And so I just started making this show, and it's just crazy when you don't, like, you're the boss, you're in charge, but you don't really know what I mean, I knew what to do. I'd been in a lot of performances myself. I mean, so I like knew what to do, but I didn't really know how it all worked. So I just put together kind of a script for what I later called Festival of Spring. And our performance was in April, I think like right before Easter or something. And so lots of pieces came together, and I'm just sharing this because as I look back, so many things came together kind of in my like blissful ignorance slash God's mercy and grace. And, it was always, like this person knew this person who had this idea about that thing. So we ended up being able to use the newly built local middle school auditorium. So it was really nice, but not too big. I grew up in a small town, so the middle school is not that big, but it was new, which was great. And because it was a school, you had to pay to use it, but it wasn't, you weren't paying for a full scale professional production fee. Basically, you were paying for someone to be at the building and open and close it and clean it. So that was very manageable. And I had, the parents of these kiddos were really invested in their children having high quality experiences. So they weren't really concerned with the scale of things. They just wanted their children to get a quality performance experience. And so I just said to them, look, if we're going to make this happen, I need you guys to sell ad sales for the program, to sell tickets. And I wanted to make it affordable for families. I know that was sometimes a lot for my family. I'm in a show, sometimes multiple performances of that show. And for all four of my family members, my immediate family members to come was going to be close to $100. And if you're a parent who's just spent a ton of money on point shoes and leotards and costumes and tights and all these things, and then you've got to pay another $100, sometimes it's a tough pill to swallow. So I told my parents, hey, and I had a couple students that were already on scholarship, which was crazy that I could scholarship anybody because I barely had enough of a studio to have a studio. But again, as I look back on this, over 20 years ago, you just realize the sort of tenderness of how God walks with us and just plants seeds and ideas. And if we allow them to be birthed in us, it can be a really beautiful thing. At that time, when I was running my little itty bitty company, I felt really inexperienced and unprepared. And I really thought I need to go to school or go work for someone to be better prepared for this. And I got to a place where, I had lots of production experience and all these things. And what I learned is that it doesn't get easier just because you have more training and more experience. Obviously, those things are helpful and important, but it doesn't get easier. You're still trying to work through building a creative endeavor, navigating that with people. I'm people. I have good days and bad days. And sometimes all of us are all having a bad day at the same time. So it's interesting to look back almost 20 years later and think, I really thought I needed all these things to be legitimate or perceived as qualified. Not much has changed in my experience producing events and projects and things. So that's kind of comforting. And, looking back, I wish I maybe would have put less pressure on myself for that. But anyway, I worked out a deal with the parents of my dancers. For every 2 tickets you sell, you can have 1 free ticket for your immediate family. And I think I capped it at 10 tickets per family, but that incentivized them to sell tickets because I also wanted my dancers to not just perform for 10, 15 people. And I had some very motivated parents who, they wanted to be able to bring grandparents and siblings and cousins. So, one mom, I don't know, she might have sold 25 tickets. She did what she needed to do to get tickets for her family in there. So I don't remember the exact nature of the deal. And I made a little, whoever sold the most tickets would win a little gift card to the local dancewear store, and whoever sold the most ad sales would also get a prize. So it was just a really, when I look back on it, just a really sweet thing. And I was just going along, just trying to make it happen. Decisions were made. I did think about things, and my mom was essentially my company manager, I guess. I would leave for school in the morning and say, okay, so-and-so is supposed to be emailing over these things. If you can deposit the check or whatever, and then I would be gone all day and then not get home till 8 at night. And she'd say, okay, I need you to decide about the font for the program. So my mom made the program in Microsoft Publisher, if you remember that elite graphic design program. But kind of the special thing was in this we weren't even big enough to really be grassroots. It was very, working out of your parents' basement kind of situation. But everybody, because of that, because I did not have the time or capacity to even pretend I knew how to do all of these things, everybody that volunteered, they really got to step up and contribute in a way that was really appreciated. One of the moms had owned her own small business, so she really knew about the importance of advertisers, and she knew a lot of small business owners in the area. And so she sold a ton of ads for me. And they add up. Those ads add up. She just already had that network of relationships and things like that. So it was just kind of crazy, every couple of days getting an email. Okay, so-and-so purchased this amount of ad space. And, it was just really exciting and fun. I mean, every day, like, okay, what's happening now? Countdown's on. And I remember when we booked the venue, there weren't a lot of choices of dates. It was sort of like, okay, this is the date. So this is what we're doing. And I think it was like exactly 6 weeks. Then I recruited a couple friends from my dance program to help me choreograph and perform in it. And, that was a whole new thing, trying to manage my peers who were volunteering their time for free. And, of course, along the way, like one person had to drop out, then I had to reshuffle things, and, there weren't any backups. And she was going to have this solo role. So I had this young dancer who, I mean, the moment I saw her dance, I was like, this girl, she has great natural facility for dance. And she's smart and she works hard. And like the moment I saw her dance, I was like, this girl could be an amazing dancer. I don't think she knows it. And I don't know what she wants to be, but I had told her that shortly after after the first couple times I had her in class. I pulled her aside and I said, you could be a really great dancer. And I said, so I want you to help you achieve what you can. So I'm not going to be picking on you, but if it feels like I'm being hard on you, or giving you more things to work on or to try, it's because I think you could be a really great dancer. And, their previous teacher was a really sweet lady, but like they were a little sloppy in their technique, and she just kind of looked at me and was like, okay. So then when my friend had to drop out, I pulled this girl aside again and I said, all right, you're going to be the soloist for this section. And she was so, so sweet. She was from such a sweet family. And she was like, oh, but I really wanted to dance with my friends. Some people would be like, ooh, soloist, I'm important now. She was like, well, I was really enjoying being in the core with my friends. And I said, well, you'll still be on stage with them. But this is like what I need you to do. I got to use my creative side a lot, which was just really fun. And just splitting the story into the first little scene was mist. And then there was like the flowers blooming. I don't remember all the parts to it. My adult student, she was the harbinger of spring. And then I had these three kindergarten age students, who I just called the children of light. I just was like it was just like making up my own world. And so I was trying to figure out a set, like how can I maximize resources, because the budget for the set was like hopefully under $100. I really like, how can I take the audience to another place without it being this huge investment of resources. And like, I don't want to buy stuff that I have to figure out where to put it, but I also don't want to buy stuff that just gets thrown away. And so one of the moms had a degree in geology. And so I had like only 2 or 3 parent meetings about this show because there was not much time. And so I just said, I need a set, and I need it to be something that we can assemble there, that's not too expensive, and that, if we take it down and throw it away, it doesn't seem super wasteful. And I said I was kind of envisioning like there being some like rocks, and she said, I think I can make you some rocks out of like old refrigerator boxes and like packing paper that she just spray painted. So we were able to have this big, huge set piece that was that we didn't have to move. It worked for the whole show. I also was like, I don't really have a stage crew. I knew someone, another adult dancer who had done a lot of dance teaching and things. And so I just said, do you think you could be my stage manager? And she was like, absolutely. So she's the one who really pulled things together. Like she was like, you need a run of the show. And I was like, oh, okay. Could you make that? She did. And of course, my brothers and like one of their friends from college helped run sound for me, and backstage. Linda was my stage manager person, so she just kind of commandeered my younger brother, and she was serious. I mean, she told him, she was like, you need to be all black. And I guess he showed up, I think maybe he had like Adidas sneakers, so she made him cover up the white stripes on his Adidas sneakers with electrical tape. And I remember him being like, I'm just here because I was told to be here and be helpful. But those are things you learn. And I didn't really feel like I could manage my stage manager. I said, okay, Linda said, cover up anything on your shoes that's not black. All right, let's do it. And I mean, I'm in school, like full-time school load, dancing myself, trying to teach these dancers. And so when I randomly had time, I would go like wander through Walmart or wherever, trying to find an idea for what else to do with this set. And so I was walking through Walmart, and sometimes, it would be like 9 o'clock on Saturday night. That's when I had time to go do things. And I was wandering back in like the floral and arts section, and they had all these silk flowers like arranged on an arbor. And so I thought, okay, cool, we could have an arbor, but then like the arbor at Walmart was too expensive. And then I thought, well, maybe I could just buy a bunch of silk flowers because those are things like I could use again and they're not really difficult to store. But I bought all these silk flowers. And then during the performance, when the actual festival of spring happened to kind of welcome in these lilies that were about to bloom, as I say this aloud, I realized I was like, Melissa, this sounds kind of crazy, but that's the story I made up. My younger students, they got to dance around and put the flowers out. So there was this really awesome transition. The show started with just these huge, massive rocks that looked like a cave that the children came out of. And so it was a little stark. And then as it progressed, and this was like barely a 45-minute show, like not that long, no intermission. So like an hour total between bows and all that. So the stage just totally came alive with these silk flowers. And so I just remember being really amazed at how this came together in a way that I could not have imagined, but a way that I was happy and proud to be a part of it and to have my name in front of it. And that I felt like I had given my dancer something and that it brought us together. And it was not perfect. My other friend who was in the show with me, like, she had kind of a meltdown like the day before, in part because we hadn't been able to rehearse. She had made some really nice choreography, very complex, but very nice choreography that we just didn't have time to fully learn. And so I just had to, like you have to make hard decisions when you're the boss. So I just had to say, you know what, we can't stay here all night. Like these kids are like in elementary school. We just can't stay here all night learning this. And so that was obviously really disappointing to her. And for like, I totally understand. But I remember she was really upset. And I remember thinking, I don't know, like maybe she's going to drop out of the show. And just things, and not to make that an issue, that she was an issue, but those are just things that come up and you have to make decisions that are unpopular, but that you feel are in the best interest of moving things forward. And you don't always really know if that's the right decision or how that's going to be received or play out. And so I remember being like anxious, like, I don't know, she's really upset. I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to show up to the theater tomorrow and figure it out then. And I remember one of my little dancers, we'd had, and I again didn't really know how to prepare. So I just brought some makeup and stuff and had it out. And um, my mom was helping adjust some dancers' costumes, like some of them, the straps were like too long, whatever. So my mom is like doing all kinds of things and running around. And I mean, I don't really have time to like check in with her. She was just looking around, being like, oh, this kid's costume needs to be altered. I'll just do it right now. And that's the kind of, and the other parents were doing that as well. But anyway, one of my little dancers, like for whatever reason, I had some glitter. Like I don't know what I'll need. I'll just show up with it. And somehow she had like gotten into the glitter, like dumped it out on the counter and stamped her hand in it. And so, I mean, it was like, I don't know if you've ever put your hand in a pile of loose glitter, but I mean, it is really hard to get off. And so I remember just trying to brush the glitter off of her, then it's all over everybody else. And I was just trying to keep her from looking like she had, like a robot arm with a silver arm. And, just things where you just have to laugh. Like there's glitter everywhere. And I remember she was such a sweet kid. I remember, obviously when you're a kid, you do things like that and you are not thinking about what might happen. So I think she put her hand in the glitter and then she was like, oh no. I think she just thought, oh, this will be fun. And then realized, oh no, this is not fun. So there's things like with the costumes, like the nearest dancewear store was about an hour away. So, and I didn't have a lot of time. So I went the first round of things they ordered and I was very inexperienced. This lady was very kind to me. The first round of costumes we ordered, I really didn't understand the difference in like kid sizes and youth sizes. And so, like, the first set of costumes did not work at all. And we had to order more, and she let me return them. And I even bought an ad in the program. And I mean, all this stuff. And I remember the costumes I picked out for the Lily scene. They were really, really simple. And I thought they were really pretty. And I remember getting home with them, and my mom was like, "Oh, like, do you think these look like negligees?" Because they had like this filmy thing that I was really like, no, this is exactly what I want. I mean, it was a white leotard and bodice with like an empire waist with a long tulle. But I could tell, like, when she was just looking at it in the bag, it just looked like this sheer white tulle. And I was like, well, there's a leotard underneath and all that. So just all these things to navigate, and then you're just trying to make the show happen. And another parent made, we called it the Lily Garden, but just a little, not concession, but a gift area so people could buy things. So she bought a bunch of lilies because it was a week before Easter, and so people could buy that and a lily. And this dance studio owner that was letting me use her space, kind of in this interim period she was in, and I mean, she was not well physically. She came out to the show, and I remember being like nervous to even invite her just because I was like her student, and then here I am thinking I could produce something. And I also knew she was not well, so I didn't want to add, like, I remember not knowing what to do. And so she came, and my dad was in charge of tickets. And so he just, after the show, was like, "Hey, Melissa, when she showed up, I just told her to come on in. Like, I didn't want her to pay for a ticket." And I was like, "Absolutely agree." But it was just that kind of moment where, I just couldn't be everywhere all at once. And I just had to trust people to make the best decisions they could and figure it out from there. And like, I just remember it was such a sweet, fun thing and to be a part of. And really, when you don't really know what you've started and then it takes place and you're acutely aware of, how much help you didn't even know to ask for, is really humbling and really exciting. And it gives you kind of clarity about what is possible when God leads you into something, when you choose to work with people and trust them and allow them to help you. And I remember my mom and I were finishing up the program, and so I just put the scripture in there, "With God, all things are possible." Because I just realized, like, this whole thing. I mean, I remember the first parent meeting I had, like, laying out all this stuff and then trying to get to the timeline. And one of the moms was like, "So we need to like do this tomorrow." And I was like, "Yep, it would be great if you could do that tomorrow. Thank you so much." I remember one of the moms sort of being like, "Is there a backup plan, like, in case this all falls apart?" And I was like, "Nope, it's going to be great. We just have 6 weeks." And so when I just think back to ways that my faith and dance have really intersected, that was one where, I just was like, I'm just having to walk by faith every day and in the spirit and not take things personally. And I think that was the beauty of that moment. I was trying to create this show that had meaning to it, that wasn't just to say I put kids on stage. And, I knew most of these kids' families from before they came to dance with me. So I knew that they expected things of me. When you have for me, when I look back, when I have that mission focus, the big picture is really clear, and all this other little stuff, that some of it's important, but you don't get as bogged down in it. And I can look back at moments where I was not really focused on a mission, and the purpose didn't have a big picture aspect to it, and all the little stuff, all the personal stuff, anything that could go wrong did go wrong kind of mentality happened. And so that's kind of that contrast. And not to say that everything with that endeavor went perfectly. And the beauty of walking in the thing God's called you to do, when it's not really possible for you to make it happen, and just that the richness of that experience came from so many of us connecting and working together in that way. And then these dancers getting to have a beautiful experience on stage, in a performance. My grandparents even came down for the show. And I remember it was really hectic, and they came and like I had to leave really early for the theater and my mom did too. Like we were just like, we gotta go. Here's the address. Hope to see you there. And so just looking back at, I mean, that was kind of the first thing I did kind of on my own in dance. And and it's easy after all this time to look back on it with like rose-colored glasses, and I don't want to do that, but there were some really beautiful things that I learned and that we can bear witness to. Like I now know what it is like when you choose to walk forward in faith with something that's important to you and what God can do with that when you keep holding, open hands before Him and allowing Him to use you to shape that. And I remember hearing a pastor one time say, God, she had a really cute way of saying it. God gives you things to move through you. Like they're not just for you. He gives you something that moves through you that then you give to somebody else that they receive and they can give. And so her point was, to be an open vessel for God to come alive in you and work through you to bless other people. And so I think sometimes when I feel like I'm not in that place, I look back at that time of producing that little show and thinking, yeah, Melissa, like you were too young and naive to have a lot of expectations about exactly how things should be. And you were, kind of blissfully unaware of maybe some of the expectations people had for you. And so you were just doing, what you thought was the next right thing, the best thing you could do with the information and resources you had available, and trusting God to bring it together. And that can sound very simplistic, but it's just a good reminder for me in that way. And so that is my story of my first kind of faith in action in terms of dance and creativity. And it just holds such a special place in my heart. And so I just say that to say that some of the most meaningful and important things we encounter as artists and as people of faith can be really small in the world's eyes. That was just a little bitty show in a middle school auditorium in a little town in Virginia. But I remember like the auditorium was mostly full on the first level. We didn't sell anything. I think there was a balcony. I don't know. But it was mostly full on that first level. Like there was an actual audience for students to perform in front of. And, that is just a really big thing for me. And I look back on that and think, a lot of people probably don't even remember that at all. But it made a big moment, a big impact for me. And one of those dancers went on to start her own dance studio. And I remember my mom bumping into her mom at some point, and she was like, watching Melissa step out and do that, she realized that she could do that and she could have a studio. And so sometimes just our stepping out encourages someone else to step out. Maybe not right at that moment, but later when they come to kind of that point of making a decision, they go, oh yeah, you know what? Melissa did this when she was 17 and she had no clue what she was doing. And maybe I can do this. And I actually have a little bit of a clue as I've learned some things. So I think being willing to be whatever role God has for you, of being, sometimes you need that first person to step out. Sometimes you need that person who's willing to ask for help. Sometimes you need to be that person who's willing to say, hey, can I help you? All those different things. And sometimes you need to be the person who's willing to like wander around in Walmart on a Saturday night till an idea comes to you that you can afford. And just lots of different things about that. But I say all that to say that that's how ministry in church is. Like a group of people come together, as imperfect as they may be, with little or lots to give, and then create something together for the good of their community, for their neighbors, for their church, for their small group. And I think that's a way that the arts can be really beautiful and bringing people together in that way. So thanks for listening to my little story. I'm going to throw in some of the photos that I have that I can get to from that time. But I just share that to encourage you. Whatever your little thing is, it can really have a big impact on you and the people around you, and not just for that moment, but for years to come. So thanks for being here, friends. That's a wrap on our faith-based dance initiative season for the Ballerina Tist.